Out of Mind, from Blue Dwarf, a Red Dwarf fanfiction PBM. Podcasts voiced and edited by David Van Den Burgh. Original post written by Cryoboy and Onion. Posted and voiced in 2007. Featuring Andy Roos and Efof Yuwan'Kar. The lift gave a long boom noise, and thick metal doors slid open. Andy crawled into the empty lift and emptied the levels of the promenade. He wanted to get drunk. Now. His scutters made for good company. 99 was nurturing, 001 was fun, but for the past week they had been working like manic accountants. Any time they had shared was in the company of filth, a broom, and a bucket. Given some time off for being the only human cleaner on Blue Dwarf, he felt that he was also entitled to steal a drink from the tea vending machine. That was before he realized that he hated tea as he fisted the can in frustration. "Promenade level," Holly's voice announced, not even asking about the cleaner's endeavours and simply letting him on his way. The promenade was in sheer chaos, so nothing had changed much. Theft was at an all-time high, mostly because everything that was on a table was no longer on a table. Andy simply mused that if they stole something like a broken toilet brush, they probably needed it more than the merchant did. The cleaner's eyes suddenly rested upon a hobo sitting in the side street. The Australian man had seen quite a few of them aboard Blue Dwarf. In a way, they kind of reminded him of himself. Andy had spent quite a few nights on a park bench, clutching some filth-ridden blanket for warmth. That was where the similarity ended, though. Andy always had a way to dig his way out of such a situation before it consumed him, be it honest work or thievery. The cleaner stopped in front of the homeless man, and set the can of tea in front of him. "Here," the cleaner mumbled. "It'll keep the cold off for a while." He carried on down the street. Not 20 seconds later, after his act of kindness, he felt an explosion of pain in the back of his head. The back hairs of his neck began to tickle, as he felt a liquid, that he highly doubted was water, trickle down from the wound. Turning back, he found a mangled can roll away from him. "That bastard just threw the can back at him. What the hell is wrong with you?" the cleaner snarled. "I don't want a bloody drink of tea, I want money, you idiot!" The hobo's scratchy voice hoarsed back at the cleaner. This was it. The cleaner had seen his fair share of hobo fights, and he had participated in an equal number of them. Andy cracked his knuckles as he approached the bum with murder in his eyes. Andy kicked open the door of Parrot's bar. Multiple cuts and bruises adorned his face. Despite that homeless guy having approximately less than half of Andy's average food intake, and that was saying something, he still managed to hand his ass back to him on a silver platter. Particles of shattered glass littered the ground like sand. A small, yellow, double-legged warning sign was labelled, "Caution, Glass Fragments." Upon the sign was a surprisingly graphic stick man clutching one of his feet, hopping on the other, all the while red liquid spurting out of both. Fortunately, Parrot's bar wasn't particularly well ventilated, so this meant he was practically intoxicated already. The cleaner pushed and shoved past the writhing mass of people dancing. Either that or they're all having consecutive seizures, and collapsed upon a bar stool. His face jerked forward and slumped onto a cold bar rag. He quickly snatched a passing cold glass of beer and held it against the egg steadily growing on his forehead. And he simply decided to chalk this one up as to yet another one of the worst days of his life. The cleaner once more grabbed the glass of beer passing by. Customers were universally wondering why they weren't getting drunk, and a man in a cleaner's suit was gathering up more empty glasses than a government-funded drinking contest between Germany and Australia. Andy drained the slowly warming glass. Despite how many glasses he sucked down, he was still yet to feel the effects of intoxication. This was odd, as he had already downed enough stubbies to put a bull elephant into a coma. "And now for your own perverse amusement," Holly's voice slowly droned on in the background, successfully sucking out all possible entertainment afforded by the performers.
matron Hattie Jacques and her back-flipping, fire-juggling nuns.
A small pinprick on the back of Andy's mind caused him to look up from his empty glasses and to the dance floor behind him. The name was familiar. It was almost like, "No, wait!" the bartender yelled in horror as the nuns filed in. "Don't bring a naked flame in the broken—" Too late. Roaring explosion tore through the oxygen and alcohol-rich air like a supernova. The resulting shockwave threw Andy off his chair, actually saving him from the glasses of booze that self-combusted like dominoes. Within seconds, everything that was so much as remotely flammable was instantly up in flames. The screams of the occupants of Parrott's Bar was almost drowned out by the crackling firestorm. The shell-shocked Andy stared out at the carnage before him. People ran around in circles, resembling great flaming trees. Shards of glass littered the ground like hailstones. All the while, the various nuns attempted to backflip the flames out. They didn't succeed. As though a god of completely unnecessary irony had suddenly pitched in, the diss track suddenly switched over to Disco Inferno. Andy groaned as he tried to pull himself together. The cleaner's suit protected him for the time being, but not for long. Pulling himself up from the ground, he saw a straight-cut line for the door. With a pronounced limp, he began to drag himself through the smoky blaze. Andy stole a glance down at his timer. The seconds were ominously shaving themselves in half as it worked its way down to 0. By his count, he had about 20 seconds before he fainted and was promptly burnt to death. Meters from the door, his arms folded out like Frankenstein reborn, he grasped the knob and shoved the door open. This would be universally known as a bad idea. At the Bee Gees' chorus, Andy was flung through the air as a backdraft sucked in the oxygen and exploded with lethal force. With a crunch and a grunt, Andy was slammed out of the air by a speeding sign. Falling faster than Michael Jackson's career, he managed to faceplant into the ground, whereafter he tumbled for a good 5 meters before coming to a full and complete stop. A good 15 minutes passed before the cleaner finally decided to get back up. Andy raised a trembling hand to his throbbing forehead as he looked back at what was left of Parrott's Bar. The door of the establishment was blown out as though a steroid-laden team of footy players, which had just been mocked and teased with 3 kegs of beer, had shoulder-barged through at terminal velocity. Beyond that was pitch black. No signs of life shone beyond those doors. No fire, no movements, not even the embers of the inferno. The Australian man groaned as he got to his feet. "I just know I'm going to get blamed for this," he lamented, gingerly cradling his wounds. However, as he looked around for what he thought would be bystanders in all directions, he saw nothing. Well, except for the corpses in all directions. Wait, corpses? What the hell is going on here? Andy ventured uneasily. It was like everyone had simultaneously fallen asleep. To be honest, it was kind of peaceful. If it wasn't for the fact that most of them were gored and he couldn't see their faces, no matter how hard he tried. The cleaner stepped over the bodies like a car tire obstacle course. From what he could see, everyone in the entire promenade level had suddenly decided that it was make my day today, and all decided to bring bazookoids to work. Not a single body didn't have a massive laser-related injury, and they were all very much dead. Andy's eyes searched for any signs of life. Nothing. There was no one here. Dead. They're all dead. The realization had suddenly hit him. "I'm not dead, you dumb shit. You got some change?" Well, except for that hobo, they beat the crap out of him. He was still alive. The cleaner decided to ignore the scary homeless man and continue on with his lamentation. "Dead? I can't believe it. They're all... Wait! Holly!" Andy's mind suddenly sparked. The ship hadn't shut down. That meant surely Holly was still alive. Sprinting to the nearest terminal, later not sprinting considering how many corpses he kept tripping over, he quickly rapped the screen with his knuckles. Yes, he may be an expert hacker, but he doesn't have a complete hole in the current technology. "Holly! Holly, are you there?" Andy wasn't completely sure what he could do if he wasn't. Running around the ship knocking on every computer screen wasn't likely the smartest thing to do. "Sup, dudes? Oh, wait, sorry, I can't help you right now." A very confused cleaner stared at the image that showed up on the computer screen. "You see, I'm dead at the moment. Give me a week or two. Maybe I'll get better then." Either the AI had just fragmented his last logic chip, or Andy had been sniffing too much chemicals, which was a very likely contender. For whatever reason, instead of gazing upon Holly's glorious balding head, he only saw a vertical coffin with the words Holly sketched on the front. This ship was going to hell in a handbasket.
Holly, why is your head in a coffin? Andy ventured uneasily. Oh no, my head's inside the coffin. That happens when you're dead. Each word was lip-sync with a coffin's door snapping open and closed. The AI's head was indeed inside. If you were dead, you wouldn't be talking to me at all, the cleaner corrected sternly. Really? Really. Oh, sorry, I'm kind of new to this death thing. Thanks for the advice, Andy. With an electrical snap, the AI disappeared. Finally, Andy's anally retentive factoids came back to bite him in the ass. The cleaner turned with a groan, placing his back against the wall. With a deep sigh, he slid to the floor in despair. This is great. This is just great. The crew is dead, Holly is bonkers, and there is no alcohol in sight. What else can go wrong? Andy, there you are! A familiar voice yelled out to the cleaner. That was a figure of speech, not an offer, Andy yelled back in the thin air. There was no mistaking it. Somehow, Efof had survived Parrot's Bar, and was now staring at him with an overjoyed expression on his face. Wow, I can't believe that actually worked. You must be seriously emotionally needy for me to penetrate this deep. Andy stared back at the alien, subtly hiding his hands and his fingers behind his back. Efof, if you value your life, you will never have the words you, emotionally, and penetrate in the same sentence again. Now what the hell do you want? Efof looked confused for a moment, before his head jolted as though he just remembered something. What do I... Oh, wait, that's right, I needed to tell you something. The multi-limbed alien paused for but a moment, his two left hands suddenly snapping his fingers in resemblance before actually continuing. You're in a coma! Wait, Andy said, trying to grasp the concept. I'm in a coma. Efof looked undecidedly into the air for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I think. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but you're lying in the bed in the medibay and you're not moving, so yes. Andy's brow furrowed in agitation. Then why are you here? Efof came close to Andy and waved all his 20 fingers in his face. I'm your conscience, woo! Andy brushed the strange alien away. After all, the strange blue man did give him the creeps, and to have all people as a representative of part of himself in his own mind just didn't add up. No, you're not. Why are you really here? Efof decided to stop mucking about. Well, Fafonians have a slight empathic ability, so I'm kind of been able to do a mind meld into your head. And here I am. Empathic? Why haven't you told anyone before? Because it's a useless ability. I can't think of any time I needed to use it. Remember that empathic woman from the Star Trek Next Generation? Andy slowly nodded. Useless! Efof continued. I never told anyone about it because it's not that useful. Sure, I can dust around the mind of unconscious people, but how often is that useful? Andy shrugged. Well, very useful if you're trying to give them a special message. Are you here to give me a message or something? No, I just thought I'd do it for a laugh, Efof admitted, and put his hands into his pockets and poked around in Andy's thoughts. Mind if I have a look around? Andy scraped himself off the ground and chased after him. There was no way he was going to let an alien walk around his mind unattended. Look, you must be able to help me. Is there somewhere I can, I don't know, wake up? Efof looked at him. I told you, dude, I'm not a doctor. He paused and saw the fear in Andy's face that he may not be able to wake up. Look, Dr. Keto just wanted me to have a look around to make sure you're not brain dead while he patches you up. And everything looks alright in here, so I'll leave you to it. Wait, patches me up? How bad is it? Oh, you look like a total mess, burnt to a crisp. You look like the dinner I tried to cook the other night, Efof admitted. Andy paced. The alien felt the awokeness as the cleaner went silent. Alright, it's not that bad. I mean, Dr. Keto has plenty of decent skin ointment. Andy sighed meaningfully. He looked back at the imaginary version of Parrot's Bar that he had created in his own mind, and suddenly they were back inside again. Efof as well. Hey, why are we here? Efof said, feeling the heat of flames all around them. Then suddenly, they weren't in a burning bar in the middle of nowhere. They were in a burning orphanage in the middle of nowhere. Adults and children were screaming all around them, their clothes and hair on fire. Dude! Shouted Efof in shock at the scene created within Andy's mind. You're disturbed! Where are we? The blazing inferno was slowly creeping up into the roof. Years of children handling flammable liquid had not been kind to the woodwork, which was now beginning to pulse an angry glowing red. Ironic that now these same kids were caught on fire themselves. In the midst of this insanity, which technically did not exist, there were two men that happened to be extremely out of place in the current madness. Efof, the blue, four-armed pacifist alien, and Andy, the intergalactic toilet scrubber.
Efof stared at the shaking mess before him. The suddenly Parkinson's disease-inflicted cleaner had yet to answer the multi-limbed humanoid's question about what the hell was wrong with him. However, he was beginning to get a rough idea. "Andy, where are we?" Efof finally formulated the word as an emblazed nun ran past. A few seconds later, he almost withdrew the question. He knew where they were, in Andy's mind. A very, very sick mind, he might add. With a groan and a drunken lurch, Andy fell forward onto the smoking ground, unconscious. The alien gave a heaving sigh as he kneeled down to pick up the comatose cleaner. He easily swung the man over his shoulders and walked towards what he could see was the exit. Efof did nothing to assist the burning figments. There was nothing he could do anyway, and even if he tried, it wouldn't really help anything. The detail of the place, the reaction of the sleeper, and the unrealistic mildness of the heat meant only one thing. This wasn't a thought. It was a memory. The alien gave a swift kick, and the weakened front door of the orphanage shattered open. It was an odd thing about a mindscape. Things that are truly powerful in real life are only imbued with as much strength as the mind allows it. Something that the mind fears is all-powerful, while something that the mind does not fear is indefinitely less dangerous. Efof shrugged the man off his shoulders and laid him back on the ground. Staring back at the orphanage, he beheld an inferno that had almost doubled in height of the building. It was only now that the Fifoni could feel the intense blaze, even though he was obviously further away from it. "You weren't meant to see this," an Australian-accented voice stated. Efof let out a sharp yelp as he noticed that Andy was both standing and conscious. "Where are we? Is this Earth?" Efof inquired as he looked around, which took a surprising amount of willpower considering the inferno in front of him. Andy himself took a moment to look around the Australian countryside, lit only by the roaring fire. The spindly, twisted, and utterly wretched foliage was only slightly improved by the cleansing blaze. "Yeah, it's close to Mount Isa." The cleaner's tone was consistent and unwavering. "I'm not too sure about what you know about Earth, but just so you know, it is in Australia." "Oh," Efof replied. "Well, I learned a bit about Australia when the Blue Dwarf stopped over on Earth for R&R. I just didn't realize that it was so, well, ugly." Andy remained silent as he numbly watched the orphanage burn into the ground. "What happened here? Was somebody playing with matches or something?" Efof ventured at the man's silence. The cleaner opened his mouth to respond, but closed it before giving a pause for thought. "To be honest, I don't know. I wasn't here when it happened. I'd snuck off, head out to Mount Isa for some reason. I can't even remember anymore. I've pushed its act so far. No one made it out alive, well, except for me." The multi-limbed humanoid raised an eyebrow, giving the man a sideways glance. "You've got to admit, that does sound kind of suspicious. I mean, you heading off in the middle of the night, everything burns down while you were gone?" And he let out a morbid chuckle. "You and everyone else in the country. It took firefighters 6 hours to get here. By then, everything in a 100-meter radius was ash. The matron, Miss Hattie Jacques, and her assistant nuns, and all my friends were dead. And there I was, a lone 14-year-old boy, frightened, shivering from the cold, and utterly suspicious. I spent 3 weeks in jail pending the investigation before they decided that I wasn't guilty." Efof brought one of his many hands to his chins and began to stroke it thoughtfully. "So that was you? They just let you go?" "Yep. Hello, goodbye, sorry for your loss, here you go, new parents." The Fifonian shook his head incredulously. "I get the feeling that you didn't care much for them, did you?" The cleaner looked back at the alien with a ghost of a smile. "Was it that obvious? You have to understand what it was like for me. I went from a sheltered life in the middle of nowhere to under the spotlight and the microscope. Everyone thought they knew me and what I had done. Everywhere I went, it was either condescending stares of pity or angry glares of accusation. And my so-called parents were the worst. After years' time, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I got out, and I was a runaway. Hell, I probably still am." Efof paused, having a reflective moment of his own. He could remember his own home world. Sure, it was boring and nothing compared to Blue Dwarf or Earth, but it was still home, right? All his friends and family from there, they were all gone, never to return. The cleaner gave a throbbing cough to clear his throat. "I was the only one who survived, and I don't want to think about that. In the end, no one understood how I felt, and I don't think anyone would ever will." Andy turned from the blaze and walked off into the Australian bush. Efof about-faced and joined the man. "That," the alien began softly, "is where you would be wrong." Andy gave the Fifonian a long stare before what he said actually began to dawn upon him. The cleaner looked back up from the ground and noticed something wasn't quite right. It could be the fact that where it was once night, it was now in the middle of the day. It could be that where they once were in the middle of nowhere, they were now in a heavy populated area. It could be that where they once were alone, they were now surrounded by children playing and laughing. Or it could simply be because the children were blue-skinned, four-armed freaks, the building was now levitating, and the sun was, well, Andy really didn't know how to describe it. "Where the hell?" Andy mumbled before he turned back to Efof, who was now frozen like a statue. It was then that Efof realized that he wasn't dipping into Andy's mind at all. He was unconscious too, and this place was home. "Hey, where's all the billboards and stuff?" the cleaner asked, giving the place a quick look over. Efof groaned. This guy was going to get a culture shock in a big way. Andy looked around at the glorious landscape. It was a paradise world. Small alien children happily played around their legs, and brightly coloured birds landed on Andy's shoulder and chirped a tuneful song happily. Andy, still plagued by the recollection of his most traumatic memory of his life, had now almost forgotten it, and couldn't help but smile at how idyllic this place was. Efof beamed with delight. He flung his arms out wide and spiraled around the plush grass. He noticed Andy was starting to get into the swing of things on this soothing world, but was still putting up some kind of resistance. He took Andy by the hand and dragged him down a carved path towards a crystal-clear beach. "This is Fiond, my home planet, as it was 600 years ago before the Hymenoptera." The sentence trailed off, but Efof didn't allow him to drag it down. He instantly continued. "Isn't it brilliant? This is the best place in the universe to live." He carried on as though he was working for the Fiond Tourist Board. Andy's face was stricken. He stopped Efof mid-sentence. But, he protested weakly. Efof sighed. "Okay, let's go over this again. On my world, there is no war, right?" "All right," Andy said with a puzzled look on his face. "And there is no fighting." Right. "And there is no disease." Yeah. "And there is no ads." "No, I'm sorry, you lost me again," Andy replied, his brain in defiance of even being able to understand the concept. "Damn it, Andy, this is the 5th time!" They walked down to the sandy beach. Efof kicked his shoes off and flung them aside to dance in the sand. He loved to feel the warm grains between his toes. Andy stumbled awkwardly over to some kind of stall, where a grinning Fionian with dreadlocks was selling some shells. Efof paused and decided to walk back over to the Australian. "You see, Andy, our people are quite different from yours." "Yeah, I noticed," Andy stated as some children played around his feet and one hid behind his leg. "Our children, they have no malice to one another. When they play, everyone wins." I was wondering why that game of tag was so one-sided. Should one fall down, they don't laugh at their misfortune. They all run over to help. Barrels are fun should they all manage to trip over. Yes, their bodies are somewhat different from yours. Blue skin, forearms, not to mention they all have schlongs poking out from their foreheads. Is that the only thing humans ever notice? Andy pried himself away from the colourful shells and walked back up the beach. A slim Fionian girl with a grass skirt walked up to Andy and gave him a small brown statue of some kind. She giggled girlishly and flapped her eyelashes at him. Andy looked back at Efof. "What's this for?" Efof grinned. "That's a fertility symbol. She wants to have sex with you." Andy's face went white as a sheet, then blushed. "She what now?" "She likes you," Efof said, a mischievous grin on his face as he looked at how Andy was squirming. Is that all you have to do on your planet to get sex? Give each other statues?" Efof shrugged nonchalantly. "Not all the time. Sometimes there's a statue shortage, so we have a special word." "What's that?" "Hello." Andy ignored him and looked back at the girl. She had a pretty face and huge puppy dog eyes, but Andy looked at her blue pigmentation and extra appendages and cringed. He wasn't even sure if he found her attractive or not. Efof gestured politely for her to come back later, leaving a flustered Andy to regain his composure. "I had no idea your world was so—" Andy couldn't find the right word. Efof shrugged and leisurely strolled along the shoreline, his hands in his short pockets. "We believe in free love. It's a bit hippie-ish, but there's no disease or STDs, so bonus.
He gave Andy's the thumbs up. Then Efof looked up in the sky. There was something he had been ignoring all along. He shielded his eyes from the light as he saw dark shadows moving across the sun. "Did you hear how the Hymenoptera destroyed my world?" he asked. Andy didn't know what to say. He gave Efof a sympathetic smile. "Well, I wasn't here, so I can only imagine." Efof's voice sounded low and sad. It was the first time the cleaner had actually ever heard of the Fafonian being anything else other than ecstatically chipper. The sunlight went flat, then the sky became cloudy. Things crashed into the ground around them. At a closer look, there were eggs, all of them pulsating with energy. Hymenoptera warriors crawled out from them. Their first breath of life was on that planet, and they knew exactly what to do. It was what they had been bred for. People screamed around them. Andy saw large creatures that looked like ants and spiders eating the people on the beach and chasing the children. Efof didn't look. His gaze was fixed out on the ocean. "It's a shame those Fionians we met a few months ago weren't as nice as the ones that I grew up with," he said. "I miss this place." Andy cringed as he heard a scream and some bone crunching. A long moment passed and the screams began to grow more distant. Then Efof suddenly turned around with a huge enthusiastic grin on his face. "Hey, you know what's weird?" Andy shrugged. "We're supposed to be in your brain, not mine," Efof said, poking Andy's head with his index finger. "So how did we get into my memories?" What's the last thing you remember?" "Well, I got beaten up by that hobo. Then Paris bar exploded in that big fireball." "Yes, I remember that." "And you were in a coma in the medibay, etc., etc." "Well, apparently so," Andy said. "That's the last thing you remember." "Well, before seeing you in medibay," Efof said. Then it dawned upon him. He started hitting his head with the flat of his hand. "Oh, I'm so stupid! You mentioned a hobo." "Yeah? The bearded guy who smells like whiskey and wee?" "Of course. I remember getting beaten up by him too. We must both be in comas." "Then how are we talking to each other?" Andy rationalized. Efof pointed to his head. "Empathic ability, remember?" Efof jumped up and down, as though he saw the mystery of the decade. "So we're unconscious in the medibay," Andy clarified. "Yes," Efof said, then suddenly stopped jumping. "Oh, I wonder when we'll wake up." Andy looked around, then squeezed his eyes tight. "What are you doing?" asked Efof. Andy squeezed his eyes again and tensed his entire body. "Look, if you really need to go to the loo, find one in your own mind. I'm trying to wake myself up." His teeth clamped together and continued to tense up. To be honest, the cleaner wasn't sure that this would work, but he had to do something, anything to wake up. He didn't want to waste any time in this Armageddon wasteland. It was time to get out of here. However, the cleaner soon realized that it was probably as effective as trying to will yourself to sleep. "Don't laugh, you know you've tried to do it before." "So, did you wake up yet?" Efof asked, waving two hands in front of his face. I can't," Andy groaned in embarrassment. "I think something's stopping me. Maybe if we both..." Efof sighed and shrugged before he conceded to join. "Feel anything yet?" Andy asked the tense Ophionian. "I'm feeling pretty stupid. Other than that, I've got nothing." "Come on, just wait." "I can't do this, Andy. This is just ridiculous." "As amusing as this is to watch you try, I think it's time that I cut in." A third voice joined in. "Who..." Efof began, but was quickly silenced by the words caught in his throat. "Well, I've got to say this scenario hadn't been exactly foreseen. You two in one reality. Who says the universe doesn't have a sense of humor?" the third stated, once more underlining his own obvious amusement. Andy's kept his eyes clamped shut, practically refusing to acknowledge anything that might distract him from his task. "He does realize it's not going to work, right?" the voice once again asked, as though Andy wasn't even there. "Andy, would you mind opening your eyes?" Andy did as the alien suggested, and immediately wished he hadn't. Before the cleaner stood a man with so many defining features that it was quite difficult to know where to start. Perhaps it was the fact that he went barefooted, with a half-piece tuxedo and a pair of hard-adorned boxers. Then again, a deserving fact could be that his hair was coloured hot pink, although it was quite certain that it was the perpetual bemused smirk that adorned his face. It was the kind of expression that your mates wore when you accidentally splashed water on your lap before asking that cute girl out. Other than that, he was actually quite unremarkable, really. Efof nodded slowly before turning to Andy. "Friend of yours?" Andy looked back at the alien with a withering glare. No, before you two start to rack your brains for who I might be, you might as well stop," the semi-casually dressed man stated. "You don't know me, which is how it's meant to work. Except when it doesn't. Kind of like right now, really. How about you? The cleaner replied and returned to the Fionian. Efof gave the man a second look over before shaking his head sagely. No, I would remember those leg hairs, he replied, pointing one of his many arms to the appendages in question. The man's eyelid twitched as though he was barely holding in a temper tantrum. Like I said, this doesn't happen often, so kindly shut the hell up and listen to the omnipotent entity speak! The dunny jockey and the multi-limbed smurf instantly ceased. The man's surprised eyes blinked rapidly as though saying, "Wow, that actually worked?" "Well, now that I have your attention, my name is Potential," he stated in a theatrical voice, along with a certain flippant bowing gesture. "Scratch that, I would definitely know someone who named themselves after an adjective," Efof replied in an off-toned voice. "I know, I once met a hobo who called herself ASCII," Andy returned doubtfully as he mentioned the name of one of his many hacking teachers. Potential turned for a moment, slowly counted to 10 before he started to wail on the two for being upstaged once again. "Anyway, is there a reason why you're actually here?" the cleaner ventured, feeling almost unsure what he should ask. Potential looked back at the man with eyes almost lining with tears of gratitude. "I'm glad you asked," he replied enthusiastically. "You see, you two are both very special cases." Efof and Andy spared each other another glance. "We are?" they asked in unison. "Oh yes, you... Wait, would it be okay with you two if we left?" the man asked as he pointed behind the two. They both looked behind themselves and realized that they were still in the middle of an entire race being exterminated. The whole backdrop of death and decay kind of puts a damper on the things, you know? With a snap of his fingers, the beach, the sky, and the entire world itself was replaced with an expanse of dizzying white. Efof and Andy's heads span around in alarm as they tried to take in the stark change of scenery. "Don't worry, it was a simple matter of finally putting your two integrated subconscious eye apart. Nothing to fret over, you're quite safe," the theatrical voice once again returned. "Now, before you ask, I'm here to help you two out a bit. You see, you two are simply so unlikely to ever happen that we just dismissed all chances of it ever happening. And lo and behold, you actually did." "Okay, I'm going to pretend I understood what you said. Does that sound like a good idea, Andy?" Efof asked. The cleaner nodded his head in agreement. "I'm getting the feeling that I'm not being taken seriously," Potential said dangerously. "You two are in a predicament that we never expected. What I was getting at is that you two are simply so unlikely to occur that we never took measures to make certain this clashing of mind never happened. Until I fully unstick you two boys, you're not waking up." Andy glared long and hard at the man. "Well then, unstick us!" Potential threw his arms up in the air. "I'm trying, but you keep interrupting me. Now just shut up for a moment until I do." The apparition paused intently, almost daring them to interrupt. "Okay, here's how it's going to work. Now, because we made sure of every scenario but the actual, your subconscious minds aren't prepared for the result. To pull you two apart, I'm going to have to jog your minds just enough to do so. For that, I'm going to have to break a very serious rule. I'm going to show you two what might have happened if either you or Efof never made it aboard Blue Dwarf." Potential clapped his gloved hands loudly. Suddenly the room inexplicably darkened to a twilight-like shade. Then his hands extended out to a large white square that had then formed a few meters away. "Andy, this is what may have happened if Blue Dwarf never had the benefit of your company." Suddenly the square jogged to life. A picture of a poorly dressed man appeared. Thoroughly hobo-like and dressed in rags, the man squatted over a trash bin. Gloved hands sifted through the debris for anything that seemed to be edible. "This is Harold Gates, most likely person to be admitted aboard Blue Dwarf considering the circumstances. A simple homeless man. Like you, he chose to be frozen. The circumstances for this was that you refused to be actually frozen. Andy Roos then went on to become one of the most famous names in history." "Wait, never mind, that's not important." The cleaner was suddenly roused from his sleep at this. "Wait, famous? Don't interrupt. I'm working here. Pay attention." "That goes for you too, Efof." Potential shot accusingly at the drowsy then sheepish alien. "Yes, Harold did not take admittance aboard the ship lightly. Indeed, he did not take it at all. A week after cleaning the ship, Gates snapped. From there onwards, he began to murder the crew one by one. After 2 months and 40 deaths, he finally made the fatal error of attempting to impale Minifil on a pair of poached goat horns. The exact details of his demise were never released to the public, only that he was, well, not quite getting his way out of that one." Potential snapped his fingers, and the rolling picture was once more bathed white. Andy blinked for a moment before the words began to formulate in his mouth. "Wait, so you're saying it was either me or the trouserless man?" And raised his hands to silence the cleaner. "Oh, don't you worry, he wasn't the worst. The second most likely is." Potential gave a clap and the picture reappeared, only this time it was the clean-shaven face of a cheerful, well-dressed soldier that appeared. "Ah, yes, the unfortunately named Lieutenant Jubbacakes. His mother always did loathe him. He chose to be frozen after you declined and Harold died of heart attack due to a horsefly overdose. Promised with a promotion, he didn't quite expect the reassignment of his life. Charismatic, influential, and disciplined, Jubbs quickly rose through the ranks. He lived the phrase, everyone's best friend. Jubbs was the prime warrior above the ship, proving the term that which does not kill me only makes me stronger. He single-handedly thwarted the Molopod, dispatched the Guelph, and all only with a plunger, a lead pipe, and a comically misshapen carrot. The cleaner's mouth hung open at the sounds of who Blue Dwarf could have had if they didn't get the plunger boy. Efof scratched his head in confusion. "Wait a second. You told him that it was the worst they could have. He sounds like a hero." "Let me finish, please," Potential replied with a somewhat sadistic grin. "You see, he was so good at being good that Jed promoted him and put him in charge of navigation. You see, because the lieutenants seemed to be so mind-bogglingly adept at everything, everyone just assumed that he could. Jubbs, being the man he was, wouldn't disobey an order. But on the first day on the job, he confused the warp drive engine for the thrust stick, and within 2 minutes, 6 years of searching, fight, blood, sweat, and tears, all been for naught as Lieutenant Jubbacakes drove the Blue Dwarf into the middle of a supernova." The odd bedfellows were struck silent as the news came. Potential paused, gauging their reactions. "You see, Andy, that cryogenic storage container was always meant to bring damage and hardship to the Blue Dwarf mission overhaul. All except for you, Andy Roos. You were the only one out of all the possibilities that didn't affect the crew. Indeed, you were so positive that your role became stagnant, and you simply had no effect. So be proud, Andy, because for the Blue Dwarf, you're the best of the worst." The Australian man's head span as the information battered him. In a way, it was comforting knowing that he wasn't going to harm the crew. In another, knowing that out of murderers and idiots, he was their best shot. Efof's hand placed itself on Andy's upper arm and shook it lightly. "Andy, it's okay, really." The cleaner's forlorn eyes made contact with the Phaeonian's. "You should be happy. Really, everyone should be happy." "Really?" Andy mouthed. His voice was barely above a whisper. Efof nodded with a bright grin. "You're the best we could ever have, and I know I'm grateful for it." "Oh ho ho!" Potential chuckled in a somewhat evil tone. "You say that now, but let me tell you something, Efof. He'll be comforting you in a moment." The man clicked his fingers once more. The square disappeared. Andy Roos wasn't the only long shot here. "You see, you and he have a remarkably similar past. Your homes went up in flames. You were both shoved into an unusual environment, but you both have a very similar circumstance of coming here." The reality slowly began to dawn upon the alien. "We were put in stasis." "Good. Andy wasn't the only one who could have been replaced, and let me tell you, the alternatives aren't nearly as malicious. Now look behind you." The two turned as another square appeared in front of them. Potential walked up from behind the two and placed a hand on Andy's quickly steadying shoulder. "Andy Roos, with your scenario in mind, this is what could have been part of your life." Efof found himself almost hoping that it wouldn't, but he quickly found them dashed as a face appeared upon the screen. However, it was one that he recognized. His father. "This is Efof Yuwan'Kar, Efof's father, and most likely to occur," Potential exclaimed dramatically. "Now, drawn onto the ship, Efof quickly gathered renown as a wise man, known for his ability to make peace between any two parties using words alone. He single-handedly resolved tension between Ireland and England, Palestine and Israel, as well as North and South Korea. Through his influence, he helped create a peace between them all that lasted for centuries to come. He also unanimously bridged a gap between Xbox and PlayStation fanboys, if only for a week." This time, it was Efof's turn to leave his mouth hanging open as the news hit him like a ton of bricks. Potential stared at Efof's reaction and almost seemed to savor it. Yes, while Efof was busy exploring and studying vast human culture, mostly on the floor of Parrot's Bar,
Efof had devoted himself to showing the way of the Feonians to mankind, and thus bettering themselves and each other. Due to his influence, the crew of the Blue Dwarf found Red Dwarf within 5 years of his arrival. Everyone lived happily ever after, including you, Andy, who had found within 2 years instead of 7, and lived out the rest of his days as he should have, and became one of the most well-known and respected computer masters in history. The Feonian stared down at the ground, with a look of supreme guilt and shame in his eyes. Andy snapped out of his own guilt trip and found himself leaping to the alien's defense. Hey, he's done heaps for the ship, and he's always been a nice bloke. He's never started a fight that I know of. He's always willing to forgive someone, and he'll even give his own life for a complete stranger. The cleaner wasn't exactly certain why he was singing the alien's praises. He was scared witless of the bloody thing a few days ago. The trouserless man stared at the Australian long and hard. So? Listen, we'll talk about this after. The next one, which at least I held dear to my heart, I think will change your mind. The picture changed, this time to something that neither Andy nor Efof had expected. It was a girl, a Feonian female. This is Efof Yuwan'Kar, Efof's third cousin twice removed. Now wait a tick, she looks familiar, Andy cut in with a screwed-up expression. Beads of sweat began to roll down the sides of Efof's face. Andy, she was the one who... Potential levered a harsh glare at the two for once more interrupting him. She was the one on the beach, Andy. Yours was the one that gave you the statuette of love. Not much of a surprise, because that's a scenario we came up every time. Both of you. Best of the best. The cleaner stared at the picture of the girl for a long period of time. What? Andy mumbled. Yep, she's probably the best thing for Blue Dwarf. Strong-willed and passionate, she saw the suffering of people, from the smallest conflict to the largest, and neutralized it. She wasn't there for long, either. She didn't stop there, either. Turned out she had a serious affinity for nanotech. Taking a sample from Earth technology, she managed to reprogram to take over the Scudder's work so they themselves had time to take up other pursuits. Finally, yours became Person of the Year in time, mostly because of the most photogenic of her race, simply because the females had their organs in the correct place. Didn't stop there, either. With her, Blue Dwarf actually found you within the first year. You practically married her on the spot, finally getting something that you never had. Inspiration, you were driven on by your love for your new wife. Your programming skills, combined with the rest of the science staff, especially Phil and NSD, actually found Red Dwarf on year 2. After that, you and her restarted the branch of the Feonian race with men's genitals actually being in the right place. Discovering and enhancing a new form of nanotechnology within a few decades, you lived and retired peacefully at the age of 155, just after your 40th grandchild just had her own family. As for the rest of the crew, Potential then began to rattle off fairy tale-like endings for each of the crew members simply because of Yours' influence instead of Efof's. Andy remained silent over the constant yammering, then turned to face Efof. The prior knowledge had been more than a little unnerving to the cleaner, both mentally and physically. The alien's face was a blank slate. It was like he had lost the will to live, like staring a Goron in the eye, or watching a tiger wailing down upon you, or seeing Whoopi Goldberg stalkers. To sum it up, Potential said in a somewhat louder tone to wake them up from the daze, Efof Yuwan'Kar, he stated majestically as though he was reading out his criminal charges, your influence was so negative and self-serving that all the good that someone should have done was watered down until you simply became nothing but a static entry in comparison. Efof, you're the worst of the best Blue Dwarf could have had. Neither Efof nor Andy had a retort for that. Potential looked down and began to fiddle with his cuff, as though he was pleased with the reaction. Well, it's been fun, but I think I've raped your mind enough for the day. Ah, yes, your subconscious eye beginning to grasp it. Good. Now, when you two wake up, you'll do well to forget this ever occurred. I've already messed up badly enough as it is, than for you two to start wandering around and questioning the fabric of existence. Now, close your eyes. There's a good boy. Now, on the count of 5, you'll be awake. 1, 2, 3... Andy's eyes snapped open as the first sight from his blurred vision was the blank moulded ceiling of the medibay. Yet for all his plainness, he'd never seen a more beautiful sight. A brief chat with the doctor that had been tasked to look over them only echoed Potential's words. They had both fallen unconscious, and were, at least physically, completely unharmed. Neither of the two had uttered a word to one another. Maybe they didn't need to. Maybe. But Andy knew that he just couldn't let it go. Pulling his janitorial suit back on, he had just pulled the sleeves up to his arms before stealing a look back at Efof. Sitting on the side of his bed, he stared blankly at the flickering television screen. To say that the alien was sad wasn't be the entire truth. It was more like shell-shocked, emotionless. The two had their lives inexplicably connected by a yet unknown magnitude. Perhaps he did want to gnaw off the cleaner's appendages, but at least not right now. Don't worry about it. Andy's words soothingly tumbled out of his mouth. Efof's shoulders gave a jolt as he wrenched out of his train of thought. About what? The alien ventured. Oh, please, you look like your entire family just died, like the reason for your existence just ceased to be. The cleaner cleared his throat after making the hasty save. Efof's eyes dipped back down to his hands. He was right, that potential guy. Figment, hangover, apparition, ghost, whatever. I did indulge myself and give nothing back. Nothing like any other Fionian would do. Andy chewed his bottom lip as he desperately racked his brain for a reply. He soon realized that he had nothing. He'd faced this dilemma before. Why he made it out and not anyone else? Why him? Andy knew only one thing. Hindsight is 20/20, the Australian countered. You can change the past, you can learn from it, but you can't change it. The sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll get back to living. Andy leaned back down as he gathered his personal belongings from the bedside. He stopped as his hand glided over a familiar shape, the mangled aluminium can of tea. Efof looked back up at Andy's back as he rummaged through the items that the medi team picked up. What right did he have to tell him what to do? He was a bloody cleaner, for Christ's sakes. Besides, what did he know what it was like being the worst that someone could ever have? He was the best. Once more his train of thought was wrecked as a grey/orange can was flung towards his chest. Grabbing it deftly with his two upper arms, he made eye contact with the cleaner. Believe me, Efof, I know better than you about what you're going through. Think of this as a gift. Think of all the potential you can fulfill and follow in your family's footsteps. Andy slung back the bag of items up to his shoulder and walked over to the exit of the medibay. He'd been out for a full day and his break time was officially over 30 minutes ago. He took one last look at the alien. As for me, maybe I am the best of the worst, but remember this. When you're the king of beggars, the point is, you're still a beggar. With that, the cleaner disappeared from sight. Efof stared at the empty corridor for a while. For so long, he didn't even notice that he had just opened and devoured the entire can of tea that had been thrown at him. He didn't even notice its flavour until after savouring the aftertaste. Running a hand through his hair, his member jiggling merrily, slowly he felt a shroud lifted from his eyes. Something was different. He didn't know what, but he knew that this day he discovered something about himself. Not necessarily something that he liked, but something that he needed to know. And for that, he was glad. This podcast is a work of fiction and is in no way endorsed, approved, or even liked by the creators of Red Dwarf. Please don't sue. For more stories or information, please head to www.bluedwarf.co.uk.